One in Three is intended for mature audiences. Episodes contain explicit content and may be triggering as they often include violence and other varying forms of abuse such as emotional, psychological, sexual, and physical. In most cases, names have been changed to protect all involved. Please note, statements and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of my own. Hi, warriors. Welcome to One in Three. I'm your host, Ingrid. Shame. It's an all too familiar feeling for, I'm going to be bold here and say, every victim and survivor of domestic violence. My guest today dives deep into shame, what it does to our inner psyche, how to recognize it, and what we should do about it. Please join me in welcoming Emma. Hi, Emma. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Great to be here, Ingrid.
Yes, I'm thrilled to have you. So before we get into our conversation, could you give some of a background so people get to know you a little bit?
Okay, well, I fairly recently discovered, all my life I've really suffered from feeling not good enough. I thought I was ugly. I thought I was stupid. All the things, right? And I thought I was the problem. I thought I was from good family. I was loved and everything. So it was all I knew. But when I broke my leg a year ago, I started to realize that my family was more dysfunctional and that my mom was quite manipulative. Now I started to put together that she actually fits all the traits of a covert narcissist and that my family is quite enmeshed and guilty. And then I started to identify. Well, I started to identify before I identified that she was a covert narcissist, that I had been kind of the scapegoat within this dysfunctional system. And once I realized that, I was like, yes, I tick every single box of the scapegoat. And what happens with the scapegoat is that you kind of get to be the landfill for all the shame and unprocessed crap of the family. So you end up internalizing shame, with beliefs like I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'm all the things. I hate my body, I'll never amount to anything, all those things. They don't just land in a child's brain for no reason. They happen because there's the environment kind of stirs them up and reinforces them. So when I started to see that, I started to really take back my power, and because I realized that shame is the underlying problem. I had been doing all this healing, all this therapy for years and years, or for a decade, maybe 15, 20 years, really. And it was kind of like taking one step forward and one step back, two steps forward and two steps back constantly, like it just doing feng shui in the furniture when the house is on fire. And once I started to realize the deeper pattern in my family, I realized that this really is the thing that's keeping it all in place. It's shame, because even though if you're doing all the manifesting and thinking about the positive, if you've got shame going on in the background, it's like this anchor that keeps pulling you down to the bottom of the ocean. And because shame says you can't, or it's not safe, and that was where I was. I was just going round and round in circles until I revealed this underlying pattern. And then I started to realize, that I had internalized this voice, and that was where the inner narcissist idea came from. And also, I started to see that this kind of narcissistic patterns happen everywhere, particularly where you have the scapegoat, the enabler, and the kind of narcissist, the autocrat. I started to see, wow, this echoes everywhere. You see it in corporations, you see it in families, obviously, because that's where it first imprints. We internalize it. You see it in governments. All leaders kind of have this narcissistic template, and they all operate on the currency that is shame. This is how they control people. And this is how we internalize that system because it's so normalized. And this is how we think the best way to control ourselves. We're like, we don't like what we're doing, so we shame ourselves in the hope that we'll change. But really, it doesn't work, because shame just makes you small, it makes you shrink, it makes you feel like you're being attacked. And it's actually a very poor indicator for medium to long term changes of behavior. It works in the moment. Like if I shame a child here because they're bothering me, they'll be quiet very quickly. But it doesn't change their behavior in the medium to long term. And This is like shame has just been so normalized in our toxic culture. And it's really the cornerstone of so many different pathologies that people have. You can trace them back to shame. I was on a podcast about addictions yesterday, and the woman that I was speaking to, they all had, they really related to it about how I speak about shame, because it is that voice that tells you, who are you? And when you drink, you kind of put pause on it. And the same, I was on a podcast about bulimia. And again, it's shame. It's like this. It's not even the belief that you're bad or you're faulty, you're dysfunctional. It's like self annihilation. That's what shame is. It's a toxic cocktail of, the belief that I'm bad is downstream from this toxic cocktail of emotions like self loathing, anger turned inwards, sadness, depression. It's like self attack. And we're told that it's good for you. We're told that shame is good for you and that you need a bit to be a good person. And I just think that's complete BS. That's complete gaslighting by society. And I understand where it's coming from. It's coming from a society where shame is so normalized that people think that it's part of what it is to be human and to be a good person. But I would argue that we don't need shame to be a good person. We don't need shame to be humble. We need humility. We don't need shame in order to change our behavior or recognize that we've hurt someone. That's empathy. And shame actively shuts down our ability to empathize in the brain. So I just think there's a false narrative that shame is good for you and that it changes your behavior. And it's coming to us from every single angle. And basically, it's just pushing a toxic narrative that's making us shame ourselves more and take projections of shame that's coming from absolutely everywhere: the family, businesses, advertisement, everywhere.
Right. And I mean, shame, like you said, it comes from everywhere. And having a domestic violence podcast, that a lot of the listeners can relate with feeling shame at some point,
Oh
either
my God,
shame
yeah.
of, yeah, the abuser is going to either falsify reasons of why you should feel shamed for whatever, fake narrative or something that you truly did do. There's a shame that you carry of, why did I stay in that relationship that long? How many people
Yeah.
did I subject to this abuse, were there other people in the home, including children, that I feel ashamed because I subjected them to that. And then just the shame of the fact that it happened to you. So now you've escaped the relationship, you're on your road to healing, and you still are ashamed to talk about what happened because you feel like that you are taking some ownership of that. So shame is a huge thing that a
But
lot of listeners are going to
if I could just say
be familiar
one
with.
thing, Ingrid,
Hmm.
you don't need shame. You don't need to
Right.
shame yourself. That's the narrative that we're told. You should be ashamed.
Yes.
Absolutely not. That's just continuing the cycle of what your your abusive partner did to you. When you shame yourself, you are internalizing that voice and pitting it against yourself. So you absolutely should not shame yourself. Yes, recognize I've done harm here. I've damaged myself, but you do not need shame to become a good person. This is a huge lie that we're being gaslit with. You do not need shame in order to recognize mistakes that you've made in the past. Mistakes that you've made, and let's be real, we've all made mistakes. We've all hurt people. We've all hurt ourselves, but we don't need to shame ourselves about them. This is the idea. If I suffer enough, if I beat myself up enough, then I'll clean myself of my sins. This is kind of the Christian idea. Just beat myself and I'll be better. It doesn't work. Our entire system is built around shame. If you look at the prison system, it's built on shaming. People go out of prison, they commit the crimes again, they commit worse crimes. Shame does not work. It does not work neurologically. It doesn't work societally. It works in the moment, but it does not work in the medium to long term. So we gotta recognize that shame is toxic and cut it out.
No, I agree with you. And the shame that people feel, they're getting, it's again, like you mentioned, it comes from everywhere. That society is saying you shouldn't be talking about these things because it's an embarrassing situation. And I do love what you said about, you need humility, you need empathy, you don't necessarily need shame, or not
No.
necessarily, you just don't need shame. I'm really, really excited to get into more of your whole thought process behind all of this. But before we do, can you just go over some definitions, like what is covert narcissism, and then go into started talking about this inner narcissist.
Okay, well, first, before I talk about the covert type of narcissist, I'll talk about the regular type of narcissist, the obvious, your Donald Trumps, the obvious kind of grandiose type of narcissist. They're grandiose, they're self-important, they're preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, and they're deserving, they feel like they're special, they need admiration, there is an sense of entitlement there. They exploit people, they lack empathy, and they're envious of others, or believe other people are envious of them. So that's the narcissist. That's kind of the DSM definition of the narcissist. And it's all driven by shame, by repressed shame. Like, this is what they've decided, because narcissists react defensively to criticism because their entire identity is built on shame and repressed shame. So if you think about someone who's really confident and someone criticizes you, you're going to be like, okay, whatever, you're entitled to your opinion. But narcissists, no, they take it personally. They feel shame, they feel offended, and this is why they go on the attack. And you see that with your Donald Trumps and everyone like that. But narcissism is really, it comes from shame. It's rooted in shame. So that's narcissism. Now, the overt types, the grandiose types are very obvious. Then you have the more covert types, which are more, oh, poor me, oh, I'm so sorry, oh my God, this terrible thing has happened, oh, everybody think about me and how poor I am. So it's kind of, you're still being the center of attention, require admiration, and that the covert narcissist is still exploitative. They'll guilt and shame people for their feelings. They will lack empathy. They will put themselves first, and they will experience envy of others, but it's in a more covert manner. It's not as obvious because they tend to be more, they're not, oh, wow, I'm so amazing, I'm the best thing ever, the big, beautiful, I'm the biggest, most beautiful thing in the world. They're much more low key. They will require to be the center of attention, but in a much more low key, and often because they feel victimized, or feel like, oh my God, my body is falling apart, I've got this happening, and they'll deflect from talking about other people to their own pain or whatever is going on for them. So that's the covert narcissist.
I have a quick question before you go on to the next one. Is it possible for someone to fluctuate between being an overt narcissist and a covert narcissist, or have different, perhaps they're covert with this individual, but then they're displaying like very obvious signs of narcissism to other people?
Usually it will be one or the other. So they usually don't have that much kind of model. Usually if someone is grandiose, they're going to be grandiose the whole time, and vice
Okay.
versa. So this is why it's much, much less obvious. And, a lot of people's abusers, they might have been an overt narcissist, very obvious. Other people will see that that person is super toxic. And that can be validating. You can be like, wow, other people see that your partner is abusive. So you don't feel so much that you are the problem. But when you've got a covert narcissist abuser, you can internalize it more. It can be even more corrosive, because you kind of think, well, I'm the problem. My partner is loving, even though they may be manipulating you and kind of invalidating you constantly, and that's very damaging as well. Even more insidious in some ways, because you end up taking on more than your fair share of the blame, really. So those are that's the overt and the covert narcissist. And then you wanted me to, that what I realized is that I did is that having been brought up in this dysfunctional family, I had been scapegoated. And like I said, the scapegoat, you're basically the landfill for the unprocessed shit of the family, the unprocessed intergenerational trauma. So you take all that on and you internalize it against yourself. You're like, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'll never amount to anything, I'll never have a partner, all those thoughts. this is what happens when you're in a kind of toxic environment, because it can't be, particularly if it's a parent, a partner, it can't be them. I must be the problem. This is how we cope. And we take shame, and we kind of shame as a sword, but it also can be a shield. So we're like, we kind of we think we can defend ourselves with shame. We're like, I'll kind of beat them to the punch. If I shame myself enough, then I'll become better and I can't be hurt by other people's shaming. That's kind of the childlike processing that happens. So this is where the shame originates and all those negative, that super negative self-talk. It doesn't come from outer space, it comes from our environment. And this I call it, it's often called the inner critic in common parlance, and we're taught that this voice is trying to protect you, oh, it doesn't want you to be on that podcast or do that thing because it's trying to keep you safe. But what I've recognized with my own inner critic is that no, just like the covert narcissist that tells you you can't be a yoga teacher, you can't do that podcast, that's not them protecting you, that's them protecting them. Okay, so the narcissist will punch you in the face, kick you in the balls, and then tell you, you made me do it. I'm doing it for your own sake. It's complete gaslighting. And yet, culturally, we're taught that this voice that we've internalized that shames us constantly, that it's some kind of protector, that it's trying to keep us safe, that it's trying to look after us. Absolutely not. Your higher self, or whatever you want to call it, your guardian, or whatever it is, your intuition, it will not shame you. That will not shame you. A wounded child will not shame you. This is different. This is much more insidious. This is basically, it ticks all the boxes of the narcissist, but the call is coming from inside the house. And rather than being interpersonally exploitative, it exploits you and it has no empathy. And it's 100% self-serving. It's not trying to care for you. It's trying to destroy you. It's trying to keep you small and keep you tiny and keep you in your little box so it can be comfortable. And once I started to realize this and stopped coddling this voice, I stopped feeding it and started taking my power back from it. And that was really the turning point for me, because all my life I've been taught to sit down with this thing, send it love, and it's just a parasite. It's a parasite. Just like if you have a parasite in your gut, you don't send love to it. You take your freaking medicine, get the thing out of you. And this shame voice, this inner narcissist is the same. The narcissist on the outside, they're the same. They're parasitic. They need narcissistic supply to survive, because they are shells of people. They're a shell without you. They need your life force in order to survive. And this is really empowering. This is not a shaming idea. This really allows you to take back your power from this thing and stop calling it you, because it's not you. It's insidious. It's a parasite, and you need to cut that thing off and take your power back.
Do you think that it's so easy to allow what you're calling the inner narcissist to thrive because it's a comfortable space that, individuals have been in, a victim of domestic violence where they've been, abused mentally and psychologically by their abuser, and this is just a familiar space for them to continue that self-flagellation beyond the relationship?
100%. Scapegoats go on to attract more scapegoating. So it's what you imprint from your childhood. You seek it because it's kind of your emotional home, your familiar zone. So this is why people, they go out with someone who's abusive, marry someone who's abusive, break up with them, find another one that's exactly the same with a different face, and the same pattern plays out. Because it's not just about changing your partner. You've got to change the patterns inside you that made you attracted to that energy, that level of control and manipulation. So this isn't about blaming anyone. This is about, you take back your power. You can take back your power. You don't need a new partner. You need to change the thoughts and beliefs and feelings that are attracting that kind of dynamic. And it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to change that. And you can change it. You're not a victim.
So how do you change it?
Well, first of all, you've got to recognize that shame is not useful ever. And this is the thing where I really part ways with the conventional wisdom that says that shame is good for you. Even if you look at the English language, you have no shame. This is what we say to people when they're acting out or doing something that makes me feel uncomfortable. You have no shame. You're shameless. You're shameful. So shame is always about control. And like I said, there's this idea behind this terminology, shameless and shameful, that shame regulates your behavior. It makes you be a good boy or a good girl, and you have to have some level of shame in order to be good, a good person. And that's completely, that doesn't even stand up to the facts, because people acting out of repressed shame are often the most violent, the most dysfunctional. Like I talked about narcissists and narcissistic collectives and cults and things. They're narcissistic groups and families, dysfunctional families. They're operating out of repressed shame, and they're very destructive and very damaging for everyone involved. So to say that we need shame in order to be good, it's a collective mirage that we're all under in our society. And a kind of this a type of individualized shame that you're bad, and it kind of comes that you're bad just for existing. It kind of has its roots in organized religion, particularly Christianity, and this idea of original sin. Before that, we did have shame as well, like in groups that was kind of more honor shaming. If you step out of line or do something that shames the family, then you would be shamed for that. Again, it's about control as well. But you're not shamed for who you are. You're shamed because you've done something that brings shame on the family. So in theory, there's a way to remedy it, and it's not for who you are, your identity. It's also super corrosive. It's also the leading cause of, unaliving, self-unaliving. And in the West, where this is kind of the underpinning of our culture, this kind of individualized type of shame that says you're a sinner, you're bad, you have to be punished, you have to experience pain in order to remedy yourself, in order to be good enough. There's this idea that you have to suffer. This idea that you have to suffer, that you have to flagellate yourself in order to be better. And the truth is, shame doesn't help people change. Quite the contrary. It concretizes their behavior. People tend to be, like I said, become more defensive in their position, and they tend to change less. Maybe we need guilt. We need a bit of guilt. We need to recognize that we've done something wrong, not that we're bad. Because when it comes to when our identity feels attacked, that puts us into survival mode. That puts us into defensiveness. And it's very hard to climb out of that. So we don't need more shame. We need less shame. That's first of all. So recognize that shame is always corrosive. It doesn't help you grow. It doesn't help you be stronger. It helps you shrink and stay small and be a victim of life. And that's not to blame. I've lived with shame for a long time, so I know what it feels like. But you've got to break the trance of shame, really. And I have an acronym, BREAK. So B is about breaking the trance. Recognize that this isn't your voice. It's a spell. And it's not always a voice. It's like an emotional cocktail of self-disgust. It hijacks your body like nothing else. So this is a spell. It's a pattern. It's a collective trance that we're all in. So you've got to catch it, interrupt it, and really name it. This is a trance. And that automatically disrupts the loop. After you've recognized that it's never healthy, it's never good for you. Then R, refuse to engage. So this is Dr. Ramani who talks about narcissists. She talks about deep. Don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, and don't personalize. So don't get into fighting with this voice or arguing with it. Just drop the rope. You don't argue with a trance or somebody put you under a spell. It's not going to work. You just give it more energy. Just say, not today. And you don't owe it any courtesy, because it's not a wounded child, right? The narcissist that you internalize, it's not a wounded part. You're not going to love it away. Just like with the narcissist out there, you don't love them enough so that they'll change. This is delusion, So then you've got to expose the lie. So call out the shame-based programming. What's it saying? That you're stupid, that you can never do anything right, or that you're an idiot. It's not true. This is not empiric. It's not an empirical truth. You have done things correctly once, at least once in your life. You have. It's not true. It's a lie. This is all about control. This is not your story. It's not true. And speaking that truth really disarms its power. Recognizing that it's manipulative. Shame is always, always manipulative. It's always manipulative. And that's what I'd love for people to recognize, that when you shame yourself, when that voice shames you, when you shame your child, or when it's manipulative. And you might think you're doing it for the benefit of that other person, but no, you're manipulating them. People manipulate others all the time unconsciously. So expose the lie. Then you want to anchor the truth. Because like I said, shame hijacks your body like nothing else. I don't know if you've experienced a shame attack, but like your face goes red, you shrink, you want to disappear, you have all these thoughts racing. So you've got to come back to your body, feel your breath, plant your feet, say your name, the year, really remind your nervous system, and you can even touch yourself. I'm safe, I'm sovereign, I'm here. Because like I said, shame puts you into survival mode like nothing else that I know of. And then kick it out. You can even do this. You shake it off physically, stomp it out, say it out loud. This is not mine, and really reject it. That's how you do it. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's simple, but it's not easy, because if you've been practicing shame, you've been giving it fuel and dancing for it and sending it love and, performing for it and trying to negotiate with. It's got 20, 30, 40 years of supply there. So it may have built into something quite malignant. So for you to change, take back your power from that, it's going to take a little bit of practice, but it is possible. You can break up with this voice, because it's not you, and it's not trying to protect you. It's not trying to keep you safe. It is trying to destroy you.
Okay, so it's like a learned or even a taught thought process, because you're being influenced by outside sources, whether it's family or society or an abusive partner. That's the influence that's teaching you to think this way about yourself. And right?
I
Did I
believe that
understand that correct?
shame is
Okay.
taught, yes, because shame really only exists as a thing in kind of hierarchical societies. And it's always about control, who wins. If you look at any other emotion like anger or, fear, there's a positive use. Anger, somebody's crossed my boundaries and I need to say no. Fear, there's a dangerous animal there. I need to run in the opposite direction. So fear and anger and all the uncomfortable sadness, there's a message there. There's something positive. Shame, no. Shame makes you shrink. Guilt, you could argue, but you recognize that you've done something bad. But shame, absolutely not. It makes you shrink. The only people that win here are the people in control, the people manipulating you, people trying to control you and keep you small. And you can stop doing that to yourself. You can stop taking the bait, taking the hook. And the cool thing is that the more you exorcise, if you like, this inner narcissist, this internalized narcissist, the more immune you kind of inoculate yourself against shaming from the outside. Someone was telling me a story on a podcast a few weeks ago about their aunt when they were younger, and they were a bit podgy and they were eating ice cream outside. And this adult came up to them and said, "You shouldn't be eating ice cream, you'll get fat." And just think about how much shame they could have felt. These girls, they laughed in his face. And this is the power. In order for you to experience shame, you need that voice inside your head that says, yes, you are fat. Yes, you have a big nose. Yes, you are stupid. Otherwise, you'll just think, return to sender, not mine. You're crazy. You're entitled to your opinion. It'll just wash right back to them. Shame is always a projection, because shame is not an emotion that we can digest normally. It's not a normal emotion. It's completely abnormal, and it's always about control.
Right. And I think ultimately someone's opinion of you has more to do with themselves than it actually does of you.
Exactly. So you don't have to take that in. You don't have to experience the shame. So shame is really at its foundation an inner process, an internalized process. You need that inner narcissist, that shame voice, to resonate, to kind of have the hook in order for you to experience shame. Otherwise, you'll just be like, wow, okay. That's yours. Thank you for your projection. Return to, I'm not taking your gift today. You can have it back.
Yeah, and I really like how you differentiate between guilt and shame because guilt is recognizing that you are a good person, but you may have made a bad decision and you
Yeah.
feel guilty for that decision, but then you go on understanding that you're a good person. And shame is wallowing more or less in every bad decision and every bad
Yeah.
thought.
And like, but normally when people experience guilt, it comes with a large portion, a large side, a very big side of shame. So this is why people have difficulty and people conflate the two because they're so often enmeshed and merged. Because, you know, when we do something bad, we experience shame. It's kind of automatic because again, it's a taught behavior. But you know, the researchers talk about babies and kids feeling shame. I believe that that's a projection as well. I believe that shame is taught. You know, babies hiding their faces, it's not shame necessarily. That's them playing, that's something else. But researchers have designated that as shame. And I believe that's because we're in such a shame infused culture that we project that everywhere. But babies, newborn babies, they don't experience shame. They're completely shameless. That's the beauty of babies. They have no shame. And we should all be striving for that because shame doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't regulate your behavior. It makes you worse. It makes you shrink. It makes you act out worse. It leads to all kinds of addictions and negative behavior and you being victimized and scapegoated more in your life. So, no, reject that voice. Reject shame. You don't need it. Never,
I
ever.
mean, everything you're saying, it sounds so obvious. Why do you think no one else has brought this up before or has thought of this or is talking about this?
Because shame is normalized in our culture. Like I said, even linguistically, you have no shame. You're shameless. These are slurs that people throw around and use all the time. You know, it's a natural way to say that someone is behaving badly. They have no shame. They're shameless. So it's totally normalized in our culture. And once you recognize that it's always a mechanism of control, you can take back your power and not be manipulated anymore. Takes a bit of practice, but it is possible. But you have to recognize that shaming is going on everywhere in our culture. Like if you walk around, and you could do this tomorrow or today, walk around your city or your town and just notice how maybe you see shaming going on online or as you walk around. You know, it's everywhere. People on social media, this is how this a currency. You do something I don't like, I shame you. You know, I say you're a bad person. But, you know, a worst case scenario, when collectives are shamed, you know, it can go up to things like genocide happens. That this happens from repressed shame. I mean, this if you look at the Nazis, you know, they were shamed, and then you know they respond to that because you have all this collective shame and you want to project it on someone else. You find another scapegoat, and now you with Israel, you know, the former golden child. Now they're going on. They're projecting their shame on a new entity. They've become kind of the top narcissist in their world, and they're projecting their shame on a different group of people because they have not dealt with their collective shame. Women have been collectively scapegoated as well. Right now, the main scapegoat in a lot of countries is the immigrants. We have all this unprocessed shame, all this unprocessed trauma. It's the immigrants' fault. So we project it all on them. And this is how we get some release from the shame because it's very uncomfortable. Shame is very uncomfortable. We don't want to feel it. This is why women pull each other down. You know, I feel shame. So I criticize another woman for having wrinkles, for being too fat. And it makes me feel a little bit better at the moment in the moment. But that is shame. That is projection.
Right. And again, it's just it has to do with that other person. That other person's looking in the mirror, not liking something about themselves, and so they'll find pieces to knock others down. Okay, do you think that we've missed anything? I mean, we've covered a lot. Because
I
I
mean,
mean,
we
I'm
could always.
fixing it is recognizing it, and then probably just any kind of therapeutic modality to address that underlying issue that works for each individual, you think?
Yeah. So really the key thing is recognizing that shame is not useful ever. Once you start being aware of that, and then when shame starts to take over you, what starts to hijack you, that voice says, oh my God, you're late, you're bad. You can recognize it and go through that break process and just say, no, I'm not doing that. No, take it back. I'm not taking this. And it sounds so simple, but it is effective, because this thing, excuse me, it's a it's a parasite, just like the narcissists out there. They're parasitic. They need to get the supply from other people. They're nothing without you. So it's like, if you imagine a light bulb, it gets all its power from you. It takes all its electricity from you. Once you stop feeding it, it'll lose its supply and it dries up, and you take back your power. But it might be a bit of a process, because, like I said, you may have been feeding it and performing it and practicing it for 40, 50, 60 years, whatever. So it's got a bit of momentum there. So this is why I work with people in groups. So we have this kind of collective working together to really, my program is called Reclaim Your Shameless. So it's about really reclaiming your power without shame, because shame has been used for way too long to control people, to keep women down, to keep Indigenous people down, to keep children down, to make people comfortable who are higher up on the wrong. It's a hierarchical tool, weapon of control, and nothing else. There is no positive use of shame.
So let's talk about that a little bit. How do people get in touch with you? How do they get, if they wanted to join this group?
Yeah, you can. I'm on social media. I'm on trauma.matrix on Instagram and TikTok and everywhere. I have a YouTube channel as well. And you can also, I'm on Substack. I've written lots of articles about it. So there, I'm the Trauma Matrix. So send me a DM over there. And I also have a free gift as well for people. If you're raising your hand and thinking, oh my God, this inner narcissist thing, I can relate. I have a free gift for you. It's 5 signs that it's time to break up with your inner narcissist. And it gives you those 5 signs that really you need to break up with this thing, and also gives you strategies and tools to make that happen. So that would be a really good next step. And you can find that at tinyurl.com/not today narc, NARC.
I love not today. That's
Yeah, not today.
fantastic. Not
Yeah, not
today.
today. Not today. So when the shame comes up, not today. Try again later. You don't owe it. And the program that I was running, the workshops that I was running were called Not Today, Bitch. Because you don't have to give this thing, you don't owe it any courtesy. It's not a wounded child. And this is the thing, this is the problem that I have with kind of the conventional way of dealing with this thing. It teaches people how to coddle it, to sit down with the shame. And I feel like that's very dangerous, because when you sit down with shame, what's underneath shame? It's not a normal emotion. Underneath anger, you might find grief or something else, but underneath shame, you're going to find more shame. It's a bottomless pit of shame. So, yes, we need to release shame, but sitting with shame is a dangerous thing to tell people to do, because they can just get lost in that and end up in a very, very dark black hole.
You've brought up so many good points and definitions and ways to fix this and ways to see it. Is there any lasting words of encouragement or wisdom that you want to leave with listeners?
Well, I would just say, you can reject this thing, and you can take back your power from this thing. You don't owe it anything. It's been sucking your life dry, and you don't even need your abuser to change. You don't need the person who's been abusing you to change. You change yourself and take back your power, and that's the best gift that you can give to yourself. Stop trying to change other people and work on yourself and taking that, and you become unshameable. That's real. That's the real flex. When you become unshameable, people come up to you and say whatever insults, and it's just like bounces right off you, because you know that that is a lame attempt at a projection of shame that they can't deal with themselves. And you don't have to take it. Like the Buddha said, if somebody comes with a gift, you don't have to take it. Let them, they bring it to your home, you send them off with it. You don't have to take that from them. And you don't have to take anyone's shame. Take back your power and let them deal with their own shame.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Emma, for your time and all of this conversation. This is definitely something that needs to be talked about more.
Amazing. I hope people got great value from this.
I think so.
Brilliant.
Thank you again, Emma, for joining me today, and thank you, Warriors, for listening. I've included the links Emma was referring to, as well as her 1 in 3 profile in the show notes. I will be back next week with another episode for you. Until then, stay strong, and wherever you are in your journey, always remember, you are not alone. Find more information, register as a guest, or leave a review by going to the website 1in3podcast.com. That's the number 1, IN, the number 3, podcast.com. Follow 1 in 3 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1 in 3 podcast. To help me out, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 1 in 3 is a .5 Pinoy production. Music written and performed by Tim Crow.